The snowstorm that swallowed the mountain road that night was merciless, the kind that erased tire tracks within minutes and turned silence into a warning. Most drivers accelerated through it, desperate to reach warmth before the cold claimed more than time. Daniel Carter did the opposite. He slowed. Not because he wanted to, but because something pierced through the howl of wind and snow. A sound thin and uneven, fragile enough to vanish if ignored. Then it came again. 3 cries, overlapping, sharp with desperation. Daniel tightened his grip on the steering wheel as training overrode comfort. He was 37, active-duty Navy SEAL, home on temporary leave, his body still wired for vigilance. He hadn't come to the mountains seeking peace. Peace was never guaranteed. This cabin was simply distance from obligation, a quiet place between missions where his nervous system could reset. But instinct didn't take leave. It stayed alert, scanning dark tree lines and snow-buried shadows. He eased the truck onto the shoulder and sat there for a moment longer than necessary, understanding the weight of that pause. Choice still existed here. Then he opened the door, and the cold struck like a physical force. Snow reached his calves as he stepped off the road, boots cracking through ice with controlled precision. The cries guided him toward the forest edge, where the wind thinned beneath the trees. That was where he saw them. 3 German shepherd puppies, no more than a few weeks old, pressed together in a shallow drift. Their coats were stiff with ice, ribs faint beneath soaked fur, bodies shaking violently as they fought the cold. When Daniel moved closer, their cries sharpened, not with fear, but with recognition. One crawled forward, then another, paws slipping helplessly in the snow. Behind them lay their mother. She was large, powerful even now, but barely breathing. Blood had frozen dark against her side, snow crusted along her flank. Her eyes opened slowly, tracking Daniel with exhausted awareness. He crouched instinctively, lowering himself to their level. The puppies reached his boots, noses pressing into the fabric as if memorizing him. Something settled inside Daniel then. Not panic. Not sorrow. Responsibility. Clean and absolute. He lifted the first puppy, then the second, then the third, tucking them beneath his coat against his chest. They were lighter than expected, fragile as breath, yet they trusted him without hesitation. The mother tried to rise, failed, then stilled. Daniel knelt beside her, gloved hand resting gently on her shoulder. She flinched once, then leaned into the touch. He had seen that look before in wounded men. Holding on. Waiting for someone else to take over. The storm thickened around them, but the decision had already been made. Daniel stood still for a breath, cold seeping through layers of fabric and muscle, grounding him in the present. He was not a passerby startled by circumstance. He was trained to assess, prioritize, and act. His body shifted automatically, redistributing weight on unstable snow. The 3 puppies pressed tightly against his chest beneath his coat, their heartbeats fast and uneven. His own pulse slowed, settling into a familiar operational rhythm. Panic was useless. Focus preserved life. The mother dog struggled again, a weak attempt that failed halfway. Her breathing rattled, shallow and strained, each inhale visible in the frigid air. Daniel crouched beside her, lowering his profile as if the forest itself demanded respect. Her fur was coarse beneath his glove, matted with ice and blood. She did not growl or bare her teeth. She simply watched him, eyes dark and alert despite pain. "I'm here," Daniel said quietly. He didn't promise safety. He promised presence. That was a promise he understood. His mind worked through logistics without emotion clouding judgment. Distance to the truck. Wind exposure. Time. Heat loss. There would be no backup, no extraction team, no recognition. Still, the responsibility felt absolute. He shifted the puppies higher, tucking their heads beneath his chin to shield them from the wind. One whimpered softly, then burrowed deeper into warmth. The simplicity of that trust struck him harder than expected. He had spent years earning trust from men trained to doubt everything. This was different. Instinct meeting instinct. As he reached for the mother again, a memory threatened to surface. Another night. Another body. Cold and blood beneath artificial light. Daniel shut it down through discipline, naming what was real. Snow. Breath. Weight. Living heat against his chest. He slid one arm beneath the mother's chest, careful of the injured side. She tensed, then relaxed, trusting his hands even as pain rippled through her body. Lifting her was harder than expected. She was heavy, muscle still strong beneath injury. Snow collapsed under his knees as he rose, recalibrating balance mid-motion. His shoulders burned, breath fogging thickly. The puppies shifted, claws clutching fabric. He welcomed the sensation. It anchored him. Step by step, Daniel moved toward the road. He did not rush. Rushing caused mistakes. Every few steps, the mother released a soft sound, not a cry, but pain carried on breath. Daniel adjusted without stopping, murmuring steady reassurances meant more for rhythm than meaning. When the truck finally came into view, half buried in snow, Daniel felt no relief. Only urgency. He eased the mother down near the passenger side, shielding her from the wind as he opened the door. Warm air spilled out. He placed the puppies inside first, watching their shaking ease slightly. Then he returned for the mother, lifting her again with practiced care. This moment, he knew, had already changed everything. Dawn had not yet broken when the storm loosened its grip, leaving the forest suspended in gray stillness beneath heavy branches. Frank Hale stood half hidden among the trees, his frame bent slightly forward by years of cold and regret. Once a ranger, steady and respected, he now moved carefully, carrying the quiet awareness of a man who no longer believed he had the right to interfere. For 3 nights, Frank had watched over the dogs from a distance. He had built a crude windbreak, dragged scraps of insulation, done everything his aging body allowed. It had never been enough. Each morning, the mother grew weaker. Each night, the puppy's cries thinned. Frank's hands ached with arthritis, his back stiff with pain, but worse than the physical limits was the guilt. Years ago, during a late-season search, he had failed to find a lost family before weather closed in. The forest had taken them. That failure had hollowed him out, driven him away from the badge and the life he trusted himself with. When Frank saw the truck slow on the road, his breath caught. He expected it to pass like all the others. They always did. But this one stopped. Frank stayed still as a tall figure stepped into the snow. Even from a distance, he recognized the posture. Balanced. Deliberate. Alert. A man accustomed to danger. Frank felt something twist sharply in his chest. Hope. Sudden and unwelcome. He retreated deeper into the trees as the stranger lifted the puppies. He didn't want to be seen. People didn't look kindly on drifters near the road at night. Still, he couldn't leave. He watched as the man knelt beside the mother dog, movements careful and respectful. That wasn't pity. That was responsibility. Frank's throat tightened. For days, he had whispered apologies he couldn't fulfill. Now someone else had arrived who might. As the man lifted the mother, Frank leaned against a tree, breath shallow. The sight dragged him backward through memory. Radios crackling. Snow maps spread across a table. The weight of command. He had believed he could always fix things. Watching now, he felt that belief shift, not vanish. Maybe failure didn't mean the end of vigilance. Maybe help came from strangers passing through storms on borrowed time. Frank waited until the truck doors closed and the engine faded before stepping toward the road. Snow erased footprints quickly, swallowing evidence of what had almost ended there. The forest felt colder without the cries, but lighter too. Frank turned back toward his shelter, shoulders heavy, knowing something had changed. He had stayed. Someone else had stayed when it mattered. For the first time in years, Frank allowed himself to believe he wasn't finished yet. The town lights emerged through falling snow like distant embers as Daniel drove with controlled urgency. The puppies lay bundled together on the passenger seat, wrapped in a jacket, their breathing shallow but steady. In the back, the mother rested on a blanket, positioned carefully to ease pressure on her injury. Daniel checked the mirror often, not from fear, but habit. Situational awareness was second nature. The stakes were quieter now, but no less real. The veterinary clinic was small, a single-story building with a glowing red cross above the door. Daniel parked directly in front, engine running. He moved fast, lifting the puppies first, then returning for the mother. The door opened before he reached it. Emily Lawson stood there, gloves already on, posture calm and ready. She took in the situation instantly. "Bring her in," she said, steady and clear. Inside, warmth and antiseptic filled the air. Emily worked with practiced precision, confirming what Daniel already suspected. An illegal snare. Days old. Severe, but survivable. Daniel stayed close, holding the puppies until they were placed in a warmed crate. No one raised their voice. No one panicked. The room moved with quiet efficiency. Daniel recognized the rhythm. It felt safe. "She'll make it through the night," Emily said finally. Daniel released a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. He sat for the first time, fatigue settling into his shoulders. This was supposed to be leave. Instead, responsibility had followed him home. Still, as he watched the puppies sleep, he felt no regret. Morning brought pale light and melting snow. Frank met Daniel outside the clinic later that day. Together, they returned to the forest, documenting snares and disturbed trails. Daniel made calls. Frank explained patterns. Authority moved quietly, without spectacle. Accountability returned to the woods. Spring arrived slowly. The mother healed. The puppies grew strong. Frank found his way back into the world through honest work and community support. Daniel's leave ended as it always would. Duty called. On his final morning, he knelt beside the mother dog, resting his forehead briefly against hers. It wasn't goodbye. It was acknowledgement. As Daniel drove away, the mountains receded, replaced by open road and familiar purpose. He would return to his world unchanged in skill, but altered in understanding. He had learned that heroism didn't always arrive with commands or recognition. Sometimes it arrived quietly, in a storm, when someone chose not to turn away.